In section 2, we're going to look at ways you can graph data. And there's going to be 3 types of graphs that we're going to focus on in this section. First being a dot plot. So dot plots are useful for when you're looking at one variable, and it's very easy to make. You just use a number line and you place dots over the values wherever they fall on a number line. Next, we have a scatter plot. So it's used when you're looking at 2 variables. Your x-axis is going to be your independent variable. And then your y-axis is your dependent variable. And then all you have to do is plot your data points, very similar to if you were plotting points for a line. And then the last one we're going to look at is a histogram. It's very, very similar to a bar graph, except the bars touch. So we use it when we're looking at one variable, and the x-axis is arranged using something called bins. And those are a range of x values. So instead of each individual thing being graphed, you're looking at a range of values. So your y-axis is actually a count of the variables in your bins. So like if you have a bin between like 0 and 10, your y-axis would be the number of values that fall within that range. So we're going to do an example of each. So the first one is we're going to look at a dot plot. So I just have a bunch of random numbers here. So if I'm going to graph the data in a dot plot, I'm going to have my number line. Now the nice thing is here is my number line can start wherever I want it to, which typically is going to be the minimum value in your data set. So like my minimum is 6 here. I then get to choose my scale. So depending on how large of a data set I have or how they vary, I might go up by 1s or 2s or however. Here I'm just going to go up by 1s because I don't have a very large range here and I don't have a lot of numbers. So just 6 through 13, and now I'm just going to start placing dots. And you can go in order of how the numbers are listed because you're just going to keep placing dots on top of each other. So I'm going to start at 12, then I have 11, then I have 13, another 12, 7, 6, another 11, another 12, 10, and 8. So that's all there is to a dot plot. The other thing you want to make sure you have is a title. Now this is just a list of numbers. So my title is just going to be numbers. But since we're going to now, a lot of the examples that we're going to do on like an assignment and like future like activities or whatnot, you're going to actually have like a set of data that you're looking at. So your title is going to be more specific. The next one we're going to look at is a histogram. So we have a list of the number of wins of a baseball team. So what I need to do here is to determine the width of my bins. So I did put the data in numerical order here for us just to make it a little bit easier. So my minimum is 12 and my maximum is 59. So I need to figure out what bin width I should use for this data. And I don't want to pick anything that's too large of a bin size so I don't have a lot in my graph. I also don't want to pick anything too small. So I'm going to go ahead and and you can start your bin wherever you want. Like I don't have to start at 0. I'm actually going to start and I'm going to do my bins by 10s, and I'm going to do 10 to 18. Of which there are 3 numbers that fall in that range. Then we'll do 20 to 29, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. Then we'll have 30 to 39, 4 as well, 40 to 49, there are 10, and then we'll have 50 to 59. And there are 8. So that's the first step, is to figure out what your bins are going to be, to find your intervals, and figure out how many numbers fit in that interval. Now I'm going to draw my X and Y axis. My title is going to be Baseball Wins. Okay. My X-axis is going to be my number of wins. And the nice thing for your histogram, your Y-axis is always the same. It's going to be my count. So how many numbers? So my Y-axis, I'm just going to go up by 2s, maybe 1s. I'm going to go by 1s. So 1 to 10. And then my way I label my X-axis, so I'm going to start my first spin at my first number of my interval. Then my next number is going to be the first number of my next interval, so 20, 30, 40, 50. And then even though I don't have an interval after that, I do have to have like a last number so I know where that bin ends. So if I had another interval, it would start at 60. So now I'm going to go ahead and create my bin. So 10 to 19, so that means starting at 10, going up to everything less than 20, I have 3. Then 20 to 29, I have 4, so they touch, so I just continue drawing another one. 30 to 40 is also 4, so I just go over and down. Then I have 10, so I'm going to go all the way up to 10, over and down. And then lastly, I have 8, so I'm going to go over and down. So it's basically a bar graph, but all of the bars touch. And within each bar is a range of values. So I know that between 10 and 19, there were 3 teams with that number of wins. Looking at a histogram, I don't know what the numbers were specifically in that range. I just know how many numbers are in that interval of values, which is why it's important to have access to your data so that you know exactly which numbers were in each of your intervals. So the last thing we're going to do is look at a scatter plot. So you have 2 variables. We have an Excel knowledge score, and based on that Excel knowledge score, you get a certain salary. And these Excel knowledge scores are out of 10, from 0 to 10. So my Excel knowledge score is going to be my X variable. It's going to be the one that determines, it's my independent variable, it's the one that's going to determine my salary, which is going to be my Y. So I'm just going to create an X and a Y axis here. And my title can be knowledge, score, and salary. My X-axis will be my knowledge score. And my Y-axis is going to be my salary. Now I can pick a scale for my X-axis and then I'll pick a scale for my Y-axis. They do not have to match here. So like my knowledge score, I'm going to go up by ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we'll have 9 and 10. Okay. For my salary, I'm not going to want to go up by ones. If I'm looking at my salary, I'm probably going to want to go up by like 100,000. So I'll have 100,000, 200,000, 3, 400, 500, 600, whoops, 700, 800, 900, and then my last one would be 1,000,000. Now I just start plotting them like they're points. So I have an Excel knowledge score of 6 with a salary of 750,000. So I treat it as if it's a point. Then I have 800,000. I have to move my title here because it's so knowledge score and set. Okay, then I have 300,000, 9 1,000,000, 3, and then it says 297,353. Now I'm not going to get exact there, but it's going to be just right below my 300,000. Then 432,000, so just slightly above where 400,000 is. 250, 5 600, and lastly 8 900. And so I have a scatter plot. We'll talk more about scatter plots in section 4. We're going to talk about how we can use scatter plots to find something called a line of best fit, because our scatter plots are mostly going to look like a line, like a linear data. It's just that with scatter plots, you can have repeated y values for the same x value, which is different from what we've known before. So like I had 2 different values for 3, which is perfectly okay for a scatter plot. And then they tend to be just placed wherever they are. They don't have to follow a pattern of some sort. So we'll talk more about scatter plots in more detail in section 4 and looking for patterns associated with scatter plots. The last thing that I'm going to talk about briefly is just creating each of these in Google Sheets. I'll talk about more of this in class. I'm going to go over how to do each of these, but if you're going to do it in Google Sheets for a dot plot, column A, you would title your values, and then column B would be a count. So you would only list each number once, and then you'd have a column where it says how many times does this number appear, and we'll talk about how to create that in class. Hit a histogram, you just have one column. Column A is just the list of your values in any order, doesn't have to be in numerical order. And then for a scatter plot, your column A is your explanatory variable, which is for us your independent variable. It's whatever your x-axis is. And then your column B is your response variable, which is your dependent variable, and it's whatever you want on your y-axis. Again, I'll go over how to do each of these in class on how to create these in Sheets. But otherwise, just let me know if you have any questions about creating any of these graphs by hand, or how we label our x and y axes.